What is up, everybody? Thank you again so much for listening. Just wanted to throw this in the beginning. I did have a little bit of a COVID scare. We talk about it on the episode. Test results came back negative, but I was just feeling like garbage, which is why we did this over Zoom. But it is an awesome episode. Of course, Derek has tons of stories, so we are going to get him back on. Episode's a little short this week, just dealing with everything I was dealing with, so that's my fault. But don't worry, we are going to get Derek back on to talk some of those more in depth about some of those crazy stories that he does have. But this episode is fantastic. We kind of get a good baseline of what's going on with Derek and some crazy stories. So enjoy the episode.
Grab me a beer and grab him a coke. We bout to sit for an hour, bullshit and tell jokes. And please don't mix it up, cause he done sobered up. Brandon and T Comedy on your social media feeds. And Brandon Taz said, is your ex drinking buddy? Brandon Taz said, is your ex drinking buddy? Brandon Taz said, is your ex drinking buddy? Brandon Taz said, is your ex drinking buddy?
What's up, everybody? Welcome into another edition of Brennan Tassif is your ex-drinking buddy. I'm your host, Brennan Tassif. If you're new to the show, quick rundown of the show. I used to be everyone's favorite drinking buddy. It was my favorite thing to get fucked up, hang out with friends, talk shit, talk shop, and reminisce about old stories. I am sober now, but that is still one of my favorite things to do. Most weeks I will be joined by a guest. This week is no exception. Joined by New York City comedian, super hilarious guy, Derek Drescher.
How you doing, buddy? Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being on the show. If everyone can tell, we're doing this one via Zoom just because a little bit of craziness going on here in New York. So we're playing it safe, but promote everything up front. Let everybody know where they can find you on social media. I know you've got the show at the Stand that you do, the 23-in-1. Let everybody know.
Yeah, you can follow me at Derek Drescher on Instagram. I don't really do Twitter or anything like that. Yeah, and I have a show monthly at the Stand with my my good buddy Gio Perez, 23-in-1 comedy, which is, you know, a play on words from like 23 hours lockdown, 1 hour recreation for when you get incarcerated.
How many people get that? How many people ask you, like, what is the 23-in-1?
It's funny. A lot of people think it has something to do with like 23andMe.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So we always riff on that, like right up top when we get it. We like to ask people, what would they do? Because if you think about it, life is pretty much like that. Also, like 23 hours a day, you're either working or sleeping, and maybe you get like an hour out of the day to really enjoy yourself.
Yeah, that's true. I never thought about it like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because when I saw the title of the show, I was like, oh, I know exactly what that is.
Yeah, there's that show. And then I have On the Gate podcast with Gio also, which is it's a jail podcast. It's just two reformed jailbirds talking about jail and comedy.
There we go. We got to get Gio on here too, man. I didn't realize that he was your PIC in all this.
Yeah. Gio's my dude, and we have very similar backgrounds also. So,
okay. Yeah. Well, I know we are going to get to that stuff. On this show, we like to talk about, we talk about everything from, I've had people on and they're like, yeah, I got really fucked up and drove home, all the way to some of my stories about getting locked up and stuff like that. So we definitely run the gambit. But before we get into too much of that, I wanted to talk about you. So you're in New York now. Are you from up here? Are you from
New York?
Okay.
From New York. Yep.
And what got you into comedy? Have you always been like the class clown? Did you always like to make people laugh, or was that just a natural kind of segue after you got out? Like, how did that work?
No, it took me. I wish I would have got into it right after I got out. But everything happens how it's supposed to, I guess. I always loved stand-up comedy, comedy, big fan also, but stand-up in particular. Like when I was a kid, Bill Cosby was still popping. I know people don't really like him anymore now, but he had a special.
What happened with Bill Cosby?
He had this special on HBO, and then there was also like Sinbad. And those are the people that were around when I was very young, like under 10 years old, maybe 6, 7. Bob Nelson, Ellen DeGeneres. And then I remember once I got around like 11 years old, Def Jam Comedy on HBO, hosted by Martin Lawrence, came out, and
I remember that.
Blew my fucking mind. And so many great comedians came across, Def Jam. You had Martin, Dave Chappelle, Chris Tucker has a Def Jam set. And I believe it was Friday nights at midnight.
Yeah.
and then so I loved comedy, big fan of comedy. And then about 4 years ago, or maybe about 3.5, no, it was maybe a little over 3. I was asked to be on a podcast, and I really didn't know like how big the podcast was. So
Yeah.
real quick, like I haven't been incarcerated for about 5 years. I've been clean for 7.
Okay.
I didn't understand what podcasting was, what a fucking email was, or any of that stuff. Like I was still learning the stuff as I was going.
Yeah, and I just want to let the listeners know, because this is something I experienced, and it was only I was in there for a much shorter time, but you literally are cut off from everything except like you get the TV room is what we had, so we could watch like games, and I make a joke about it on stage, but we would watch Walking Dead like as a family every night on Sunday.
Yep.
But other than that one connection to the outside, like as far as trends and styles and apps and all that, like you have no idea what's good, because they literally take all your shit from you. It's not, you can't be like, oh, let me get my phone and call my landlord and tell him like I'm gonna be late this month. Like there's none of that. It's just like, this shit's ours now. I remember I was freaking out the first time when I got picked up on my warrant, because I was like, I have to be at work, and like just please let me call my job, like out of anything. And they knew what was going on because they knew I was in recovery and stuff. So I called them and told them what was up, and they're like, all right, just let us know when you get out. And come to find out it was 3 months later, but still, like you don't have any access to anything when you're in there.
I know I had been being like in and out of institutions since I was like 13 years old. You know what I mean? Like whether it was group homes or juvenile detention, rehabs, because I had the issue with substance abuse, a lot of time in jails and correctional facilities also. I just was not connected to like technology whatsoever. Like the first time I sent an email, I thought I was going to fucking blow something up when I hit the phone.
What was that like being asked to be on the podcast? Like, how did they find you? Because you live in New York, but were you in the comedy scene? Were you going to the stand? Like, how did that whole thing happen?
Yeah, so I had a few friends that were comedians,
Okay.
And I never like, it wasn't like a big thing to me. I didn't like go to their shows all the time or whatever. I didn't talk to them about comedy much. It was, I knew what they did. But then I had one friend who was friends with a pretty well-known comedian, and we were just at the park hanging out, and then I hung out with them again, and they're like, hey, you want to be on my podcast? And I was like, sure. And just so you know, in the last 4 episodes they had done, it was like Ari Shaffir.
Yeah.
It was like Andrew Schultz, Ari Shaffir, me, and then Nikki Glazer. That's who I was like sandwiched in with,
And you weren't doing comedy at the time. You were just kind of like, yeah, I'll go. That's a true addict mentality. And I know, because that's my mentality too. Is if someone's like, hey, you want to do it? You're like, yeah, fuck yeah, let's do it. Let's go.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And I just had no idea, like, is brevity the right word? No, right? That's too serious of a word, right?
That's a serious word, but yeah.
I didn't know like how big the podcast was. And I remember after I did the podcast, I had like 500 followers on Instagram. Yeah. And when the day the podcast came out, I woke up and I had 1,500 followers.
Damn.
And I made my account private.
Damn.
I freaked out, dude.
Yeah, because you didn't know what was going on.
No, I was like, who are I? I was going through like a custody battle for my daughter. I was like, I thought everybody was my daughter's mother. Like I freaked.
All these fake accounts.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So yeah, and then I just started blocking people. So I mean, whatever, you live and you learn, you know what I mean? And then I started comedy literally like right after that. Started.
So you just started getting on stage and talking about it and stuff?
Yeah, I did comedy wrong the first year.
Okay.
I was doing the Bringers.
Yeah, tell us about that, because this is something, because I have mainly comedians on. I've had actors and musicians and stuff, but it's mainly comedians, and that's something we go back and forth on, where there are some people who are convinced, they're like, no, I'm doing shows, and I'm like, yeah, but it's like a bringer and stuff, like, so you're just basically pumping the promoter's pockets, like and then there are other people, like, I'm very pretentious. I'm very much like, it's about what we're trying to say, it's about who we're trying to say it to, yada yada yada. And so what do you mean by you did comedy wrong?
I mean, there's this whole like structure that's laid out for us with the open mic scenes and getting to know other comedians and becoming friends with them. And, and bouncing material off your friends and
I'm
writing
a
with
huge believer
people.
in that. Yeah.
Yeah, and writing with people and hitting as many mics as you can. I mean, there's a hustle and a work to it. You know what I mean? Bringers, for me, I'm sure like it's worked for some people who've just done bringers and maybe they make a living from comedy now. It just wouldn't have worked for me. It wasn't enough. I need reps.
Yeah,
You know what I
I'm
mean?
the same exact way where
My
that's the thing that was always crazy to me is I did a bringer when I first moved up here because I didn't know anybody. Like I moved up here without the only person I know or knew from the podcast and kind of from the comedy world in New York, like personally, was Matt Fulcheron, and that was kind of it. So I was like, all right, well, let me do something to kind of get out there. And I had a couple friends visit New York, and they told me about the industry room and stuff like that. So I did that. And I was shocked that there was a few people on that show where they're like, oh, this is my third time doing comedy, but they don't go to mics. They don't do any of that. They just do bringers because then they're big rooms and they're full. And I was like, but that's not.
And if somebody has a really great set and ends up getting passed on that, there's a lot of cracks that are going to show unless you're like some kind of fucking, what's the word I'm looking for? Like
prodigy. Yeah. Well, and that's something I talk about now with older, because I've been doing comedy since 2009. And that's something I like to joke about now is there's a lot of comics that are so focused on the viral aspect of it, which is true. That is a new part of the business you have to understand. But then I was talking to a friend of mine and he was talking about, I was at the show and there were all these young, hot comics, quote unquote. And they got up there and the room just wasn't playing ball and they did so poorly. And then he went up and crushed and he was just like, yeah, but I've been doing this forever. Like I was joking with
knows how to read a room.
Yeah. And I was like, yeah, I've done bar shows in Oklahoma City while the Thunder game plays in the background, like trying to get that room on your side. Yeah, that's a lot harder than doing like a Facebook Live and being like, check this out, guys. Yeah, like those people want to see you. When you get into a room where people don't want to fucking see you, you got to earn that.
Yeah,
and that's where all the reps come in.
I feel like that stuff is only going to come with time. Like there's still, I keep an open mind. Like I wouldn't be sober today if I didn't have an open mind and be like, there's always more to learn. There's always more to learn. Like I haven't learned how to read every room correctly. You know, and it's something that I'll continue to work at it. I'll get my time in and I'll figure it out eventually. When it comes, it comes. But there is this, for me, it's like, I got to go up as much as I can. You know, I try to keep a healthy balance. Yeah. You know? I'm like, I need to go to a mic. But like, I want to get up, at least between 2 and 4 times a day. That's the goal.
Yeah. And that's awesome too, because that's how there are so many times, especially in this industry, where just one phrasing, just saying something a little bit different in a joke you've done a million times can actually change it from being a 3 or a 4 to a 7 or an 8, or take a 7 or an 8 and make it a 9 or a 10.
Cutting that fat.
Yeah. And that's something you can't get unless you're constantly going up and tweaking and recording and listening back and editing, because there's so many times where I have a bit and I'm like, oh, it gets laughs, like it's good enough. And then I just put it in my pocket and then I'm like, all right, that's done. Yeah. And then I'll pull it out one day and I'm like, just saying it after not saying it for a while. I'm like, oh, this is terrible. Like it's too long. The tags aren't good enough. And that's just something you get from reps. So that's what you did. You said, I'm going to do this. And you just jumped in.
I changed it up. Yeah. I stopped because it was like 1 mic a week and like a couple bringers a month, which is not, it's just not good for your art. It's unhealthy for your art. You know what I mean? So yeah, now I started doing it every day. And then the pandemic happened, which was wild. And then I had to do some Zoom stuff and then in the parks and illegal shows. And all that stuff. So, but I grew a lot, man. Like those Joey Bats mics and shows, man.
Yeah, I went to a couple of those when I first got here.
If you can get people's attention while fucking the bus and the dump trucks going by, you're growing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of those things too, where I remember, because I reached out to Dan Lamore, who's been on this show, because we had done a show together in Jacksonville, Florida. So when I moved up here, I kind of reached out to him, and he's like, hey, man, I haven't done an open mics in a while, but during the pandemic, I did Joey Bats. You should check that out. And I went there, man. And it's like you said, there's chaos happening all around you. So if you can get someone to come up to you after the show and be like, hey, I like the bit you did about X, Y, and Z. It's like, oh, that's an awesome bit. Because if people heard that, outside when all this shit's going on, you know, in the middle of the East Village, that means it was good enough for people to pay attention.
Right. Dan's one of those prodigies we were talking about before.
Yeah, he is. We had him on. He talked all about it. How like 2 years into comedy, he was passed at the Cellar, and I was like, "What the fuck, man?"
Wow. I've learned a lot from that guy too. Like anytime he drops a little nugget, you know, I pick it up. He's a funny guy, fucking great joke writer, and just the experience, like getting past at the Cellar 2 years in. That's fucking
and it's crazy. His whole thing about he got passed and then he got dropped basically, and he was at 300 and something pounds. And
the weight loss.
The
ultra running.
He had a great line where he's like, well, once he wasn't performing at the Cellar anymore, he was like, well, if I don't have comedy, then I'm just some fat guy. And that kind of is what sparked everything with that. And I was like, damn, that's crazy. But
that's wild.
He's like you in a lot of ways in the fact that he's there. Like he does the hang every time I go to the stand, not every time, but a lot of times I see you there. You're always around other comics. You're always networking. You're always talking to other people, which is, in my opinion, that's just as important sometimes as the joke writing is getting to know people, because there are so many times I've bombed on stage, like at a mic or something, trying new stuff. And people will still book me because they go, well, I know you're funny.
Right.
And I know you were just trying something new. So I'm not going to hold that. Like, why would I hold that against you? Like that doesn't
I hate when people like use, like when someone's like, oh, I saw them bomb at the mic. It just reminds me of Allen Iverson, you know, practice, man.
Practice. We're talking about practice?
Practice. Like, I know it's important. I honestly do. What are we talking about here, man? Practice.
That's true. And when I first moved up here, that was a hard thing I was struggling with. Was I'd go to mics and I'd be like, well, I'm going to do what I always do at mics, which is work on new material. But then I'd be around a lot of people and I don't know who they are. They might be respected comics. They might book shows. So I'm like, oh shit, should I pull out like real material? Like,
hey, so want people to get to know you, come up to you. Hey man, real funny. You know?
And I was like, I don't know what to do. So like the first couple of mics, it was a mix. Like I did like new stuff I was working on. And then I'd throw out like quick jokes that I knew would work. But then after a while, I was like, this is stupid. Like I'm doing material that I've been doing for years. Like I need to work on, that's what the mic is for. I only get 3 minutes. I only get 5 minutes. Like I need to stop wasting it on old stuff.
Yeah.
Because you know what I mean? Because it's like, I don't have a big show coming up. I'm not trying to get this 5 minutes tightened up for something. I'm just doing it so I could be like, hey, aren't I funny, guys? Like, isn't the new guy funny? Huh?
So you can be accepted by your peers.
Yeah, right. Which is,
I mean, but I understand that completely, 100%. You know what I mean? It's like, but yeah, that's comedy. Yeah, I mean, I do it as I work 2 jobs. I work for a nonprofit as a drug counselor, and I also teach at Body, which is a gym that only hires formerly incarcerated individuals.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and then I all my other time is devoted to comedy, whether it's writing, hitting mics, hanging at shows, doing shows, you know.
Yeah. So. Well, that's good, man. You mentioned it earlier, and I kind of wanted to get into it. You said you've been kind of in and out between rehabs and group homes and incarceration since you were 13.
Right.
So how did that start? Was that a product of just being raised in New York and kind of your upbringing, or was that something that you just kind of got into a lot of trouble, wrong place, wrong time? Because I know in my situation, every time I've been arrested, it's 100% my fault. Like, and I've heard stories from people where I'm like, dude, that sucks. Like you literally were just at the wrong place at the wrong time. But for me, it was always my fault. Like I was always the one.
I hold myself completely accountable for everything I've done and everything I've been arrested for or convicted of, because it just helped me like grow and let that part of my life go. You know what I mean? But yeah, I was young. My mother used to work like 2 jobs and my father would work 2 jobs, you know, just so they could put food on the table for my brother and I.
Yeah.
So I would get dropped off with my grandmother for the earlier part of my childhood. Very close with her. She passed away, and I just wasn't born with the ability to process my feelings and say how I felt. And
that's something I'm very familiar with.
So instead, I would act out in anger or just bad behavior. You know, I would just not going to school, cursing out teachers, getting arrested, stealing, then becoming physical with the police like an idiot, you know, I'm getting my ass kicked by the cops. So back in the day, I mean, I guess it still happens now. I probably should. The cops used to beat the shit out of me a lot, man. And then it just, you know, I went to juvie, I went to group homes, and when I was 18, you know, we're going back to 1999. I was like, oh, I'll try and join the army and see what happens. And I got
okay. So yeah, what happened with that?
I got kicked out. I was asked to leave after 11 months.
Oh, so tell us about that. So you think, all right, I'm 18. I'm going to turn everything around. I need discipline in my life. I need structure. You know what I'll do? I'll join because I had that thought too. When football was done and I was like drinking every day and I was out of shape and I was like, I need to do something to turn this around. And I was still in college, but I thought, you know what, I'll join something, like whether it's the Army or the Marines or something. I'll join something. My grandfather served, like that'll give me structure. That's what I thought.
Right.
And I ended up not following through with it. But what happened with that? So you're 18. Are you still in high school? Like what's going on?
No, I ended up getting my GT when I was 16.
Okay.
Because one of the detention centers I was in, like that was an option. So I was like, fuck it, let me get my GD so I don't have to go back to high school when I get out of here. And then I was getting in trouble out here, and I joined the Army, and I do very well in basic training and AIT, which is like your advanced individual training. I was a bridge crew member. We built bridges. It was like a construction job almost. Yeah. Some of them permanent, some of them could be, you know, taken down. A lot of the times it was like in wartime, you would build the bridge and then set it with explosives, hoping the enemy would cross, you know. And then once I got to my regular,
Gotcha.
Yeah, once I got to my regular unit and I had a sense of freedom, and it wasn't just training, I completely fell apart. Like at that time, I was a horrible alcoholic. I mean, I would drink as soon as I can, and I was not a good drunk. I got into a lot of fights. I was a violent drunk, and I was an asshole when I was sober too. And then they're like, yeah, we're gonna chapter you out. We're gonna chapter you out of the military. So
do you
I didn't get dishonorable. I was discharged under honorable conditions.
Okay. And this is fascinating to me because this is something I've noticed in my life. And I know I'll compare a lot, just, you know, because we do have similar situations as far as being sober and things like that. And that's something I want to get into later, but that's something I can relate to, because when I was in college and playing football, and it was, you wake up, you go to work out, you go to class, you go to practice, you go to dinner, and you go home and you're so exhausted, you pass out.
Right.
And when I had that structure, I was making A's and B's. Like I never had to go to study hall.
You're killing it.
Just, oh my God. And like, we would still go out like normally Saturday nights after the game, or maybe on like a Wednesday during the week. But it was like every once in a while, like we'd go out and have a good time. But there was that structure. It was like, boom, boom, boom. And then when I got my last concussion and they're like, listen, man, you can't play anymore. Like this is, you're just too injured. And as soon as, like you said, is getting to that unit and getting that freedom, as soon as they were just like, no, your time is your time. You just have to be at class 2 hours a day. But even that, fuck it. Mm-hmm. I fell off the rails.
Yeah.
Like wake up doing shots, like drinking and like in between classes, like going to bed, and it was bad. So in my situation, it was exactly that. It was getting that freedom that kind of unlocked what was already there.
Yep. I didn't know how to act when I was left to my own devices. Plus I was carrying around a lot of, feelings and trauma I had from when I was younger, you know what I mean? That I'd never properly dealt with. And after I got out of the military, you know, eventually, like it wasn't too much longer before I was incarcerated. And then I just spent a lot of years in and out of every kind of facility you could think of. And eventually my addiction had progressed into heroin use.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was horrible. And I didn't end up getting my life straight until I was, you know, or make the decision to try to straighten my life out till I was 33. You know, I'm 40 now.
Okay.
And I still got a ton of work to do. But yeah, it spiraled out of control. Like,
yeah, I was 30 when, I mean, it was weird. I went to rehab when I was 24, 25. Mm-hmm. And I remember looking around and there's like 18 and 19-year-olds in there. And I was like, damn, I should have done this sooner. And I didn't even start drinking until I was 18 because I always thought like, oh, like I saw what it did to people around me, and I was like, I'll never touch the stuff. And then as soon as I started drinking and all my anxiety went away, I was like, this stuff is magic. And
That's
then,
how, when I first did heroin, I was like, where have you been my whole life?
yeah,
And then it, within a matter, like the first time I did it, I sniffed it. And then within a matter of a few weeks, I was mainlining it. But I remember sitting in the meetings and listening to the old timers and being like, I've never been that bad and I don't have a problem. And then it just, you just trick yourself into like,
you think you can outsmart it.
yeah. Yep. I mean,
well, I heard what you said, and I'm never going to let that happen to me. And then the next thing you know, you're like, what the fuck happened?
yeah, you're like, I'll never be homeless. I'll never do that. And then it all happens. It all happens. It all happens. Yeah.
So what, if you don't mind my asking, and if you don't want to talk about it, just let me know. But that transition from drinking and doing, some softer drugs into getting into like heroin and things like that, because for me it was cocaine, and that was a gradual thing. It was like
a lot of cocaine too, my friend.
Yeah, but in my situation, it was one of those things where it was like, all right, like I'll try it at a party, and then I realized like, oh, I can drink a lot more if I do this, and then next thing you know, like I have a story I tell on stage, and I know I've told it on this podcast before, but I got a settlement for a car accident. And after all the dust settled, I got a check for like $26,000. And I spent that in 28 days in Daytona, like not even an expensive city, because I was just buying, the tag and the joke is even shitty coke costs a lot if you do enough of it. But it just went from like a bump here and there at a party to now all of a sudden I'm blowing thousands and thousands of dollars on it.
Yeah.
And so for you, was it a gradual thing, or was it one of those, as soon as you started, you were like, all right, here we go?
Yeah. So I was like 30 years old when I started doing heroin. Right.
Okay.
So yeah, within those 3 years, like I did some time. I think I did about it for one of those years I was incarcerated.
Okay.
But I had made a complete mess of my life. Like it was as bad as it had ever been. I was living in cars, sleeping in parks, fucking on the street. It was like getting locked up was actually a good thing. I get a few times, I get arrested, spend like a few days, in the joint, get out. But yeah, no, it was bad. It was bad. And, it's kind of started with pills, man. Yeah, like I started messing around with the Roxasets and the Oxycontins. And I remember one day, I ran out of pills, and my brother was also like, I used to use a lot with my brother. I was sick. I was, withdrawing from opiates. My brother was like, I hate to see you like this. I don't have pills, but I could give you something to, make you feel better. And I was like, what do you got, fucking heroin? And he didn't say anything. I was like, oh shit. I was like, fuck it, bring it up, and yeah. And I did it, and I wasn't sick anymore. And I really liked the way it made me feel. It felt better than the pills. And I was able to, I liked it so much better than cocaine. Like cocaine, I couldn't operate on. I'd get very paranoid. I wouldn't want to move,
Staring at your peephole for like 6 hours.
Yeah, look, yep, exactly. On the fucking floor, fucking, crawling around. And then with the heroin, I felt like I could like operate, and and it was, for a few weeks it was good, and then it became everything. And you get sick if you don't do it, just the same thing as the pills. I just remember the first time I got dope sick, it was so much worse, man.
Yeah, I've seen that just between the situations I've put myself in and then detoxes and rehabs and stuff, like you don't want to be like, everyone's always like, oh, just like stop. And it's like, you don't understand, like the withdrawals are, in a lot of ways, that's the reason to keep going, because you don't want to, like, I didn't want to face it. I remember when one of the times I was like, all right, I need to get sober, my sponsor was like, you have to go to a detox. And I was like, no, like, I'll just stop. He goes, no. Like,
oh, alcohol, bro, you could die.
Yeah. Well, that's what he said. He's like, the way you've been drinking the last while, like, you have to go somewhere where they can monitor you, because you could die. Right. And that was like 28 at the time. And that was the first time where I was like, oh man, like I've crossed this line, this invisible line that we talk about, where it's like, I'm never getting that back. I'm never going to be able to go out with my friends and just have a cup. Like, that's when I realized, like, I'm fucked.
I mean, we just have that gene in us that just we can't. One is too many, 1,000 is never enough. Not to quote fucking literature,
Yeah,
but
right.
But
I mean, it's also one of those things where it is very much a superpower if we use it the right way.
Absolutely.
Having that drive and that just like, I don't care what happens, I will not stop. For people like us who are doing like comedy, or if you're an actor and entertainment, like you have to have that. I don't give a shit how many times I get rejected. Like I'm not stopping.
Keep going. Yep.
Yeah. Because there's how many people have we seen do an open mic, they bomb and they're like, this isn't for me. And they never go back. And there's something about, and I was talking to Hannah Berner about this, and she said a lot of comics are either addicts, recovering addicts, or athletes, because they have that same mental drive where it's like, I'm not stopping. Like you can do whatever you want, but we're going to keep going.
Right.
Which is true, because I mean, case in point, look at us.
I mean, yeah. And I would rob and steal whatever you could think of I'd rob drug dealers. I'd rob people. I'd fucking drive to Jersey and strip copper off of people's roofs. I had a fucking ladder. It was bad.
What? I hate to ask you this, because this is like, I know.
Ask whatever you want.
But just because this is like a lot of the, like one of my best friends is a recovering heroin addict, and another one of my good friends was as well, and he's recently, passed away. He just couldn't get it together and it took him, but they came from, like well-to-do families. So they would steal, but it would be a lot of times like they take their, their mom's jewelry or what is it like in your experience to be like going to a drug deal, thinking in your head, like, well, I'm just going to take this guy's shit. That's gotta be, terrifying. Cause that's a real life. Like if your parents catch you taking the TV off the wall, like you're going to get in trouble, but
yeah, so I couldn't steal from my parents because my mother was a tough broad from the Bronx, and she didn't play that shit. Plus, my father has also been sober for a long time. Like he drank. So my mother, she was not an enabler whatsoever.
Yeah. Okay. See, I come from a different line where everyone's always like, we'll help him.
She gave me $5 one time, dude, in all the years I was using, and she was just like, because I just annoyed her that much. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
She was like, whatever, fucking have at it, you know what I mean? But $5, like my mother never left herself open to like get robbed by her kids. I think my brother like took her credit card one time and like went to the bar, and I think she was pressing charges.
Oh shit.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
So she did not play around.
She didn't fuck around one bit. Yeah, I mean, there is, so you're gonna get sick, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe you're even starting to get sick. And I was talking to a friend of mine about this the other day. I remember like, going to like, to pull a jukes, to pull like a little heist, whether I'm, robbing somebody, robbing a drug dealer, whatever it is. And I would start to gag,
yeah,
from the excitement of it. I would like throw up sometimes and be dry heaving and shit. Yeah, it was quite the adrenaline rush, man. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little different than even if it's a sold out crowd at the stand, it's still a little different.
Yeah, no, I've never felt like that through comedy. I hope I do one day.
Yeah.
It's close. It's close. Yeah, but not quite the same, you get addicted to the lifestyle and the what's the word I'm looking for? The repetition of things. It's like it becomes almost like the ritual.
Yeah. That's the thing too. For me, it was less about anything. The thing it was most about was one, getting fucked up, but then two, it was about, okay, I get off of work, I get my smokes, I get my bottle, I go home, I line up 3 or 4 shot glasses just for me.
We're probably so happy,
dude. The greatest. I tell people this all the time. The best feeling in the world was leaving work and knowing I had the next 2 days off, and having a little bit of money in my account. So I knew like if I wanted to order a pizza, I was good. And going home, that's the happiest I've ever been in my life, with a handle and a pack of cigarettes. And people were like, that's sad. I go, you don't understand. Like that, I've got 48 hours. Man. I can fucking watch Netflix and just get obliterated. Was that literally one of the happiest moments of my life. And I've like had some great things. Like I played college football. Like I've had some awesome things happen, but I remember being at peace in that moment of like, everything's going to be okay. And then of course, 2 days later, I'm trying to sober up for work. I can't hardly move. I can't see, and it's a disaster. But that moment in time right before any of that happens was the most at peace I've ever been.
Right. And it's like, I remember trying to be like, because I was just such a bad addict where it's like, you got to save something for yourself in the morning, Derek. You have to, because you wake up, you don't really sleep well when you use heroin. You know what I mean? Like you nod out, but you're in weird positions.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You get up and then like usually you wake up, you start moving around, that first yawn, that little tear starts to form in the eye. That's for me. That's when I was like, okay, I'm getting sick.
Yeah.
And then, I look at what did I leave for myself? And I already knew, but there'd be like a little corner of a bag. Yeah. Bullshit. Can't even leave a bag for myself. Cause that's going to buy you some time to maybe actually, have a kind of productive day or whatever. But it's hard to do your dirt when you're sick.
Yeah.
Because if it gets deep enough, you're just going to crumple up and lay on the floor,
Yeah. And that was always a thing, was the planning for the future. Like at night, all the liquor stores are closed. I see how much I have left in the bottle, and I go, this isn't going to last. Like you should find a way to get to the store now. Right. And I'd be like, no, I'll make it last. Then you wake up the next day and I'm throwing up and I'm shaking and everything's gone. And I'm like, cause I never drank beer. I only drank liquor. So I would either have to take from my roommates, like go in the fridge and get some of their stuff. Or if I was living alone, I would just be fucked. And you always do that thing too. In my situation where I would wake up 4 hours before the nearest liquor store open. So it's like, why couldn't I just sleep for 4 more hours? Then I'd get up and be like, oh God, and just stumble to the liquor store.
Yep.
But it's like, nope, I woke up at 7. It doesn't open till 11. And now I'm fucked.
Yeah, dude. And it's such a horrible way to live your life. I got to be honest. I never thought in like my wildest dreams that I would become clean. Like I was pretty sure that like, I was either going to do something really, really bad or I'd be, locked up forever, or I would die with a needle in my arm. You know what I mean? Because I'd overdosed a few times,
Okay. Well, let's see, because I've talked about it on the show, getting alcohol poisoning and getting rushed to the ER. And I completely agree with you, because I'll never forget the last time my last drunk, and I have a whole episode where I talk about it when my friend Tony died from an overdose. I kind of brought it up and I did a whole episode about it, but I remember distinctly looking in the mirror thinking, you're going to die here alone. And that's the plan. That's exactly what you deserve. That's exactly what's supposed to happen. Everyone else was right. You were wrong. Everyone was right. This is what's going to happen. Right. And then through no fault of my own, through a miracle, I had a friend who was in town. He found me, rushed me to the ER, and I lived. And that was kind of the moment where I was like, okay, I gotta change this. Because, when you're young and you're reckless, doomed youth is very romantic. That's cool. That's fun. The 27 Club, like, fuck it, die young, leave a beautiful corpse. That's cool. But when you get into your 30s, you're like, this is sad. Like, there's something very wrong with this.
Absolutely.
And now I was going to say, go ahead with how that happened for you, because I've told my story before, and it's crazy to think now I'm coming up on 4 years. It's like, I thought I was going to die that day in that bathroom alone. Right. And now I've got 4 years. So in your case, how did that happen?
So I said, me and my brother, we used a lot, and we did a lot of, whatever illegal activities we had to do to get money to procure heroin. We were both addicted to heroin. So we lived above a restaurant. I lived on the 3rd floor. He lived on the 2nd floor, and I found him overdosed one day.
Oh shit.
And I remember I couldn't revive him. Like I got him to take one breath, and I ran down into the restaurant, and I was like, my brother's dying. He's overdosing. Somebody help me, call 911. And they're just so there was paramedics eating in the restaurant.
Get the fuck out.
Yeah. Yep. And they were able to get up there. They got him like stable. The ambulance came, and they I remember when they completely revived him, because he was in the back of the ambulance, and my brother was a big guy. The ambulance started to shake. It would like move side to side a little bit. And I was like, oh, yeah, I was like, he's alive. He's moving around.
That's my brother.
Yeah, that's my brother. And so saying that, I found him overdosed. I This is months later. That happened in the summer. So this is right around Christmas when this happened. There was this dope on the street that was like making people overdose. And when you're using heroin, that's the shit you want. You want the stuff that's because it's strong. And you're just like, oh, I'll do one bag and, you know, see what happens.
I'll do less.
Yeah, I'll do less. So me and my brother and I, we get this heroin. This came in a little pink envelopes. It was not stamped to my knowledge. Some of them will have like a Superman stamp on them, whatever, you know, or whatever.
Trademark kind of thing.
So I'm trying to shoot up in this bathroom and I miss my vein, right?
Oh, shit.
So I'm not sick anymore, but I'm not high.
Yeah.
We leave this place that we were at. We go to somebody else's place to also was using heroin, and I put 3 bags in the spoon. I don't know what the fuck I was thinking, and I had just missed with 2.
Jesus.
So the last thing I remember is putting the needle in my arm, and then, you know, being revived at the hospital, and I hear my brother, you know, I don't see him, I hear him. He's going, save my brother, please save my brother. You know, as soon as I came up too, I took this huge breath and I started to throw up. They turned me to my side and I was like, I'm cold. And they put one of those warm blankets on me and they were rubbing my back. And I'm like, I'm alive, brother. It's so crazy. We would call each other brother, like during tense moments, like,
yeah,
not like brother, like, hey, like brother, like, you know,
yeah,
and
my brother. Yeah.
He was like, do you want me to call mom? And I was like, no. And he was like, do you want me to call? Yeah. You want me to, my daughter's mother? He was like, you want me to call Adrian? And I was like, no, don't call anybody. I don't want anybody to see me like this. And, you know, once I started being able to kind of have like an idea of what was happening, my toe knuckles were skinned to the bone.
Ooh.
So after they get me stable, you know, I'm like, my brother's there with me. I'm like, what happened? He's like, you know, you overdosed. And the people in the building wouldn't let me call 911. Because they thought the police were going to come and they didn't want to get arrested. My brother had to like drag me out of there.
So he was dragging you and your feet were dragging on the floor.
Exactly.
Holy shit.
Yeah, he had to fight with them about taking me out of there. They're like, no, the cops are going to come. It was, so yeah, he also said like, he's like, I heard you take your last gasp of breath in the car. And then he said, like, I also defecated myself too. So he's like, when he drove me up there, he was like, my brother, I think my brother's dead. They came, got me. They had to give me 2 shots of Narcan.
Holy shit.
Yeah. And then the nurse came in and it was like, I just want to let you know, you're the only person we were able to revive this week. And the doctor came in and he was like, because I had overdosed before. It's a little different. This was a little different. You know what I mean?
Yep. I know exactly what you mean because I had gotten alcohol poisoning before. And it was always like one of those things where it's like, yeah, I just overdid it. And then this one was like, the doctor comes in and he goes, hey, I don't know what's going on. Every body is different, but you should have been dead like 6 hours ago. And I was like, what do you mean?
And so much shit can happen. Like you go brain dead.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know, not come back the same.
It's one of those things where and for those of you listening who don't know, Narcan is what they give to revive people who are overdosing on downers, heroin.
Yep, on opiates. Yeah. So what it does is it rips the opiates off the opiate receptor, I believe, and it throws you go right into withdrawal. Yeah. That pisses a lot of people off. Like, what did you do to me? Put me back.
Put it back. Put it back right now.
So when the doctor came, he was like, you know, you seem like a pretty nice guy. Most people that we save are not as calm as you are. And I just remember him being like, you know, we're going to get you into a program tonight. And I was like, nah, I'm leaving. And
so is that what you did? You left?
I left. I knew then that I was going to change my life. Either I was going to die quickly after that, or like something was happening. I was either going to go this way or that way.
There was going to be a shift.
and I continued to use, but it was not with the same ferociousness, I would say.
Okay.
Something changed, you know, and I ended up getting clean.
So, and you said earlier you have 7 years now?
7 years. Yeah. August 28th.
Congrats, man. That's awesome.
Yep.
I wanted to, this is something I wanted to touch on. I know we're coming up on the hour, but I wanted to touch on this because this is something I found interesting that you and I have talked about together at the stand and stuff. But to me, it parallels a lot like with comedy. So there's people who get into comedy and they kind of dabble in it and they do like a mic here, a bringer there, that kind of stuff. And then there's people who are super intense, who are very like, I'm the first to admit I'm very pretentious when it comes to comedy, all that kind of stuff. And it's the same thing in circles when it comes to sobriety. And this is something that you had mentioned to me, where when you first got sober, you were very much like, oh no, like you got to do it that way. Like there's people who are California sober who still smoke weed and stuff. And you're like, fuck that. That's not, because that's exactly because I'm very much that mentality when it comes to comedy and when it comes to sobriety, where I'm like, no, you either fucking do it or you don't do it.
Right.
And you said, because you have more obvious time than I do, you've kind of relaxed over the years as far as your standards and things like that. What kind of shifted that in your life? What kind of made you not change your mind, but kind of open your mind with that kind of stuff?
Once I started working in the recovery field, you know, I remember when I was like getting certified for like my recovery coach and peer mentor, I was like, you know, they were so focused on harm reduction. They're like, you know, if you could get this person, help this person get on methadone, that's great. And I was like, nah.
Yeah, Suboxone in Florida, they use Suboxone.
You be sick and you just you deal with that pain. And
yeah.
You know what I mean? Because like, dude, I did this
exactly
methadone game. I played the game. You know, I wouldn't take my Suboxone. I would take it the day before I was getting tested, so it was in my system, and I'd sell the rest. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it just I saw people really out there struggling. It's like, you know, some of us as addicts were just tortured souls, and we're down, and you got to start somewhere. You know, and I'll be honest with you, like certain 12-step meetings, you know, I go to a different one than the one I used to. They would say things like, if you're on something, we don't want you to share because we want to talk to you. And I feel like that's a very dangerous thing.
Yeah.
It's a very dangerous thing. You should let people talk. Even if they're not going to remember, who knows? But like, there are cases where people have been able to live good lives on methadone and Suboxone.
Yeah.
Is it ideal? No, absolutely not. You think those people feel any better that they're taking 2, 4, 8 milligrams, 16 milligrams of Suboxone a day? No. You know what they use in England to get people off of heroin? Heroin. They use heroin.
Do they? Yeah.
You go get your shot every day. You know, and those people, it's.
That to me, to be honest with you, because I've seen the situations that, like I said, one of my closest friends I met through rehab and stuff kept saying, you know, I'm going to get sober, you know, for my family, and then couldn't do it. Then he got a girlfriend. I'm going to get sober for my girl, and then couldn't do it. Then she got pregnant. I'm going to get sober for my son. And now he's dead. And it's like one of those things where it's like, almost to like what you're saying is it's harm reduction. Like I would much rather you have a maintenance program and be alive than just say, well,
who knows what happens out of that maintenance program? Maybe you grow and get clean eventually. Because you might get to a point where you're like, yo, I don't want to fucking be on Suboxone anymore. You know?
Exactly.
Or, you know, my brother passed away in July.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, man.
Yeah, you know, from a fentanyl overdose. And you know, him being the one that saved me. My brother got clean before I did. He had more time than me at one point. And, you know, he was dealing with a ton, like he ended up getting shot a few years ago, 17 surgeries. He survived
Holy
that.
Shit.
Yeah. And he had his last surgery in May, and he's ready to get his life back together. And, you know, he did fentanyl and he passed away. And I'd much rather my brother had been on Suboxone or methadone.
Yeah, absolutely. And
you know what I mean?
You know, and it's because it's your brother, so he's the one who saved you, like you said, and you're incredibly close with him. And but even in other people's situations, in the circles that we run in, especially now, being sober, it happens all the time. Like we see it all every couple of days. I get a text, so and so's gone, this
Yeah.
person's gone, suicide or overdose, or it's crazy because I've talked to regular people, like normally functioning human beings, and they'll be like, oh my God, it's so sad, somebody
You almost
died.
become numb to it, right?
Yeah. So they're like, somebody died. And I go, oh, what happened? They go, oh, well, she was, 95. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's what happens.
Yeah.
Like people, and they're like, yeah, but I've never lost someone. And I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah, where the fuck?
Where have you been?
You need a new circle of friends, motherfucker.
So like, living your life.
When my brother passed, it's like I knew the neighborhood well, the neighborhood of people dying from substance abuse and addiction. Definitely the neighborhood was a little rougher because it was my own brother, but everything I've done to better myself, like all the programming I did in early recovery, grouping 4, 5, 6 times a day. I mean, it helps you get through things like that. You know what I mean? And my brother definitely, he saved my life at one point, so he wasn't here for no reason.
Yeah.
All kinds of thoughts always go through my head, especially after he first passed away. Why am I here and he's not?
Survivor's guilt,
or, if I could trade, I would. These things are impossible, and you'll eventually stop thinking about them on your own. But, I accept what I did when I was using. I accept all the bad things I did. I hold myself accountable. I accept that my brother has unfortunately passed on from this world, but how he was a big part of my life. And, and I love him, I'll always love him. And, my brother becomes another lesson for me, which hurts to a point, but this is how we continue to do what we do,
Yeah. And that's definitely something that I've taken away from the lessons, as you put it, that I've learned, where it's like, did it have to be that bad? And then I look in the mirror and you go, yeah, it did. Yeah, it had to be that bad, because there's a dumb movie line I quote all the time, but it's lessons not learned in blood are soon forgotten. And that's, I say that all the time when I'm talking about getting sober, because my hats are off to the people who are like, yeah, I got drunk and texted my ex, and now I realized I had a problem. I'm always like, good for you, man. Like I was literally dying. Like I was in a hospital room dying. So yay, tomato, right?
Yeah. Whatever it takes is different for everybody. You know what I mean?
Everybody. Yeah.
The hard alcohol use though, and opiate use is very super similar. Like you can't die from a heroin overdose. I mean, from like withdrawing from heroin, you might feel like you want to, but
that's an argument I used to get in at the halfway house all the time when opiate addicts would come in. I'm like, you're not gonna fucking die. They're like, yeah, I am. I go, no, I'm the one who would die. You're fine.
Yeah, but I and even like having conversations like this, like I don't get to have them as much as I did anymore. I don't go to 5 meetings a week anymore.
No, I understand.
But, but it's good. Just being real about what it was and what it is and all that stuff. So it's like, but DMX said it best. He was like, if it takes for me to suffer, for my brother to see the light, give me my pain. And I was just like, damn, like my brother passed away, and it's almost fortified my recovery.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even more now.
Well, it's one of those things where you, again, can go one of two ways. You can, like you said, fortify your recovery, be like, okay, that obviously happened, and now it's my responsibility to stay sober and to relay, make people laugh through some of my pain and trauma, like you do with your stand-up. And it's like, and my brother gave me that opportunity. Or, there's another way you could go, and there's always that other way. And it's just, it comes down to a choice. And like you said, you've made the decision to kind of lean into it and keep pushing.
Yeah. I don't gamble anymore, but like, I always like to tell myself, like, if I had to bet on myself to stay clean today, I would take the bet.
Yeah. Yeah.
And maybe tomorrow, maybe.
Yeah. Sometimes I hate some of the corny, like, one-liners, but I mean, they're corny one-liners because they're true. They're cliches because they're true.
Absolutely.
But like, Well, sometimes I catch myself on the phone talking to a sponsee, and I'm like, man, you just got to take it a day at a time, you know?
Yeah.
You got to live and let live. And I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? You hack.
Yeah, you sound like the rest of these corny motherfuckers, but that shit works, man.
No, it does for sure.
It's the simplicity if you let it in. We're the ones that always overcomplicate everything.
Yeah. Oh my God, so much. Well, I really appreciate you coming on. We got to get you back on. There's some jail stories I want to talk about and stuff too, but we're coming up on the hour. Plug everything one more time. Let everybody know where they can find you.
You can follow me at Derek Drescher on Instagram, and then come check out my monthly at the Stand, man. 2301.
Sold out this month, so you're not getting tickets this month.
Sold out this month. Next one's
January
18th. Thank you, brother. January 18th. We always have a good group of comedians on, and we're just two jailbirds that are reformed, and we just curate a show, and it's a lot of fun. So yeah, check the show out. Follow me on Instagram if you want to come take a Combody class. I teach Tuesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays. You could reach out to me through Instagram. Maybe I'll give you a free class. And yeah. Brennan, I appreciate you having me on. This was great, brother. Thank you so much.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Thank you, everybody, for listening. BrennanTComedy.com, Brennan T Comedy on all social media. Got a show in Chelsea, January 6th with the Hell Yeah Comedy Boys. Check that out. And then check out the Patreon, patreon.com/BrennanTassif. We'll talk to y'all next week.
Take care, brother.
You too, man. Thanks again.
Thank you.